Thank you. For more analysis on this story, joining us live is Jeffrey Wilson, the Research Director at the Perth USAsia Centre. Appreciate your time. That sort of blowback we just heard about from China is to be expected, isn't it? I mean, how significant do you think it was to see Japan come out so publicly in a show of unity with Australia?
Japan's statement really shows that the kind of diplomacy Australia is playing here is working. For the last 12 months, Australia's laboured in a bilateral trade dispute with China on our own, and the size differential means a country like Australia is never going to prevail in that. So the strategy that the Prime Minister is taking to the G7 is actually one of building a coalition, getting other countries to come together as a force multiplier for what Australia is trying to do. And that we've seen Japan jump behind the efforts on the same day really shows that that agenda is gathering steam, and I think we'll see a strong response from Western world leaders in Cornwall next week.
Jeff, I know you were in the room with us yesterday when the Prime Minister delivered that foreign policy speech in Perth. He talked a lot about the reforms at the World Trade Organisation. Just how hard will it be to achieve the sort of reforms that the PM was talking about when it comes to implementing the changes Australia would like to see when it comes to those economic coercion threats?
The World Trade Organisation is a notoriously complex body. It covers lots of different issues and has almost 180 members. One of the strategies Australia's employing here is, because reform efforts in that big group have failed for nearly 2 decades, is to try and get what we call a mini-lateral coalition, a grouping of a small number of like-minded countries, the G7, countries like Singapore, other free trade supporters, to put together what a consensus on reform amongst a small and friendly, like-minded group before taking that to Geneva to the full membership. Because putting something to a vote on the floor of 180 members is just not going to get a result.
We know that the Prime Minister will be meeting with the US President Joe Biden. It's his first face-to-face talks with the US President, which is a really big deal for Australia and the Prime Minister personally as well, no doubt. What will you be looking for after that meeting?
We've seen some really strong statements from the Biden administration since the election, before it was even inaugurated, that the US would support Australia in some of the trade bashing and coercion that China has directed to us over the last 12 months. But this has come from administration officials, and what will be really interesting is the extent to which that's reflected in an Australia-US head of state agreement, and also now what can be done about it. We have heard from Kurt Campbell in the administration that Australia won't be left out on the field to deal with this on our own. So the question after this summit's going to be, well, okay, what's not standing with us going to practically mean?
I see the Prime Minister was on radio this morning in Perth before he flew out to Singapore to begin that tour. He was asked about just how confident he is that iron ore won't be impacted on some of the trade ban elements that China has instituted. And he did seem like he didn't think that this was something that China would be able to go ahead with. He kept saying China needs our iron ore. Is he overly optimistic on that front?
No, I don't think so. Australia is the world's most reliable supplier of iron ore, and indeed, because of what's happened in the number one competitor, Brazil, over the last year with coronavirus, we are the only one at the moment, which is why prices are so high. For China to sanction Australian iron ore exports worth nearly $100 billion last year would be economic suicide for the Chinese government. That leads to the shutdown of heavy industries, the collapse of its Belt and Road infrastructure program. It's not an option. The costs for China would be too high to do that, which is why we've seen many other Australian exports subject to various kinds of trade bans, but iron ore and natural gas have thus far been left pretty much alone.
Let's hope it stays that way. Jeff Wilson would be in a whole world of pain if iron ore was on China's hit list. Appreciate your analysis. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Ash.